Welcome to the IDP Hunter podcast. As you know, I'm IDP Hunter. You can follow me on Twitter. I'm a writer over at the Fantasy Six Pack, the RPO Network. I'm also on the DL Star of the Month over on the IDP Center. And I also do this podcast called the IDP Hunter Podcast. I'm joined by my co-host, Jamie Perog. Don't call him Pierogi because he gets upset with that. He's not a cheese potato pierogi. It's just basic Jamie Perog, okay?
Makes me hungry when you say that.
There's nothing basic about you, Jamie. He does the Going for Two show. He does the start sit, okay? He does the Going for Two live, and he does on Tuesdays, he does the cheat sheet. What's going on, Jamie?
Not much. Enough about me. We have a special guest, Matthew Montgomery, so let's get into him.
Without further ado, I introduce you guys to Matthew Montgomery. He is a writer over at Football Guys. He writes an amazing article, Jamie. I don't know if you've ever seen this thing.
Yeah, I read it last week.
I'm going to pull it on my screen, the IDP Stock Market, week 11. It is a wonderful article. He's also a podcaster over here at RPO, so please check that out. And he does a YouTube show called the IDP 5. And last but not least for my audience, if you're ever on Twitter, which I know you guys are because I'm on there, we're all on there hanging out. Jamie's more of a Facebook guy, but Matthew does this thing called the IDP Notes where he lists all the trends that he's seen throughout the week. Without further ado, how you doing, Matthew?
I'm good, man. I'm good. I was just telling you before the show went on. I've been waiting for weeks. I got a lot of wisdom here. Got a lot of bars. The bar's raised high. I cannot wait to get into this conversation with you guys.
And you know what conversation I want to get into? You got a lot of trophies on your wall. You got a lot of plaques. You got a lot of accolades. It was a mouthful to say all of your feats. But I haven't mentioned your ultimate trophy yet. Your ultimate trophy is you just got married a month ago successfully, correct?
Yes, sir, I did. Yep, and she's kept me around. It's been 1 month, so many more to go.
Congratulations, my friend. And
Thank you very much.
Let her know thank you for taking the time out and sharing you with us for the next hour so we can talk about IDP and offense and Thursday night betting. I'm looking at your stock market article here. Matthew, can you tell the audience what can they expect out of Football Guys? They got subscription. More importantly, what can they expect out of you in your article?
So with Football Guys as a whole, what you're getting is just a collection of not only wisdom, but you're getting some of that new wave, the youth, to kind of basically you're talking football with a bunch of different people with a bunch of different backgrounds. And I was telling you guys a little bit before we kind of got on here, we may have differing opinions at Football Guys on players, but the wonderful thing about them is that you're allowed to have a differing opinion, and it's not like hey, you're wrong because I believe this. You're allowed to get that debate in there. You know, that's what this is all about. That's why we love doing this. That's why we love watching ball, because there is no right or wrong way to analyze players. So I'm going to like certain traits about a guy, and I'm going to dislike traits about another guy. But that culture of Football Guys allows you to really foster that environment and really get your take out there and, you know, kind of helps you grow into what you really want to look for when evaluating players. So I just love the culture, to be honest with you. You know, it's just nice working with people that are not only intelligent, but they're inviting and they want your opinion.
Yeah, I've been watching Football Guys over 15 years ago. That's when I discovered the Football Guys, and I've been hooked since. They made me a better fantasy player throughout the years, and it just makes me think for myself as opposed to just telling me who to start, who to sit, who's good, who's bad.
It's a collection of information. You know, everybody's got a start-sit opinion, and that's fine. But what Football Guys gives you, if you're in a deep salary cap dynasty in the weeds league, that's a site to go to. But if you're in your garage with your buddies and you're just drinking a beer, having a draft, we got content for that too. You know, it's a collection of everything you want as a fantasy football fan. It's catered to you. And now we're starting to go more into the video side and the podcast side. You have the shows like the Audible with, you know, Sigmund Bloom and Cecil. You've got the new stuff with, like, you know, the IDP Dynasty show. You've got the fantasy football show with Alfredo and Dave. There's just all kinds of stuff that you can do for any type of football fan. And I think that's what makes it such a great company.
Yeah, and then you said culture, you said experience. There's guys over there that I just love, and they've been in this field for so long. You know, John Norton. We both know John. He's been doing it since the 90s. Shout out to him. Gary Davenport, the legend. You know, I'm in a few of his leagues as well. Sigmund Bloom, we know. I mean, there's tons of people. Jamie, you used to. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you got to shout out Joe Bryant, the creator.
And Joe, we trust.
Yep, love Joe Bryant. I get a weekly email from him, and I look forward to every week.
So I had another question for you, Matthew. You're on the YouTube. You're on you call it the IDP 5 over at the RPO football show, right? So
yeah.
What kind of videos do you do exactly, if you want to share that with the audience?
So I chose the IDP 5 because I'm very much a glass half full kind of guy, but in football, you cannot just focus on what good is going on. You kind of got to read the trends on what maybe not so good. So I do 2 guys that I'm really positive on. I'm really high on, people that I think stood out from the week. I do 2 guys that I think we need to either pay attention to, or we need to start really, really diving into. Are they slipping? Are they falling in ranks? And then finally, everybody's favorite part of fantasy football is, can I find the diamond in the rough? Is there somebody that I know that nobody else knows that can help me win a league? So I kind of like to end the show with that, you know what I mean? Because I'm going from really happy to maybe the vibes are kind of low. So I'm going to leave you with a nugget. My favorite one so far this year, I really, really knocked Zach Bond out of the park. I was high on him throughout the preseason. And then, my first video with RPO, shout out to Leo for letting me do that. I was like, hey, Zach Bond's going to be a league winner. Get him now. And he's been everything that you can imagine for in a linebacker. So I like to think you're getting a different perspective on the same topics we all look for. Who's good, who's bad, and who do I not know that I need to know?
Exactly. So I guess that opens up. You're the perfect candidate for our first topic here. We're going to get into streamers and what have you. I'll tell you what, Jamie, if you don't mind, I'd like to do your offense first because there's a couple things that happened this week. I'm kind of interested to see what you have to say. Everything that I'm going to go over here, I just want to give a shout out to one of my editors over at the Fantasy Six Pack. Joe Bond, he has award-winning rankings over at the Fantasy Six Pack. He was the #1 offensive ranker for Fantasy Pros last week. Of course, I'm the #4 this week, but he doesn't just do football. He does baseball. They have hockey. They have all sorts of stuff over there. I got a guy named Jamie Perog. He does the wide receiver, cornerback. He doesn't know if he wants to be offense or defense, Matthew. He does them all. But there's an incredible amount of talent over on the Six Pack as well. 2 of my favorite sites, Football Guys and the Fantasy Six Pack. I will say this, with this Fantasy Six Pack article I write, I do a waiver wire article. Most of my players are under 20% owned. I have over 50 players. It's set up for every single IDP format. So I'm going to be reading a lot out of there. And I know Matthew has a ton of players that he wants to go over. So, Jamie, I'm just going to pull up my screen real quick. I just wanted to show the audience where they could find my IDP work. But if you don't mind, I'd like you to kick off the offense. What's been going on? What do you see?
So let's start with the quarterbacks. If you need a quarterback this week, I know we got a bunch of bye weeks. Bo Nix. Bo Nix is still only, depending on what site you're on, 33 to 44% owned. You got to prioritize these mobile quarterbacks. That rushing upside is king. Plus, the rest of the season, you can keep him on your roster because he has the 6th easiest quarterback schedule. My second one, I would go with Russell Wilson. The Ravens allow a league worst. I think it was 295 passing yards per game. So expect Russ to continue cooking. Finally, if you're desperate, go with Jameis Winston. He could be trusted in the matchup versus Saints. There's that revenge game factor. And the Saints traded away their most impactful defender, Marshawn Lattimore. So out of those 3, Matthew, which one would you go after? And do you have any other ones to add?
Well, I just want you to know that you've picked probably 3 of my favorite, low-end fantasy football quarterbacks. I'll start with Russ because I'm wearing the jersey. I think Russell Wilson, at the end of that tenure with Denver, I don't even know if Russ knew who he was at that point, but for whatever reason, we got this reset. We're getting, maybe Mike Tomlin just knows how to get a culture built. Maybe he just understands how to fit players in this system. He's made a lot of players work over the years. but I think no reclamation project is better than what he's doing with Russell Wilson right now. The moon ball is back, so you're getting the big plays. George Pickens is an elite receiver who has had bad quarterback play his whole career there. We're finally going to see him with at one point in time, borderline Hall of Fame quarterback who can throw a deep ball. So we're going to see a lot of high potential volume there. Jameis Winston is just a fun quarterback to have in fantasy football. It is boom or bust. It is the definition. You are either going to get 400 yards, 4 touchdowns, Brett Favre, or you are going to get run out of the back of the end zone type of plays. You're going to get the, why did he throw that? Oh my gosh, what is he doing? And the revenge game factor, I really like that. The last thing we saw with him in the Saints was that weird, he called his own play and he scored a touchdown and he broke the unwritten rule. So I do think he's the type of player that remembers stuff like that motivates him. We're probably going to get a Twitter-worthy pregame speech from him. I'm sure it'll go somewhere, probably not eating dubs, but I can imagine that Jameis Winston is going to be high energy this week, so that's really cool. And then Bo Nix, I think Sean Payton is an offensive genius. I think he's a little rough around the edges, so he doesn't get exactly the positive spin from the media as much as he used to, but he knows how to scheme for a quarterback like Bo Nix. Now, he's not Drew Brees. Nobody's ever going to be Drew Brees. I don't like doing the comparison to legends, but if you're going to have short, effective routes from receivers and just have an accurate quarterback get the ball where it's supposed to be, you'll have an effective quarterback in that offense, and I believe that Bo Nix is that guy.
Love it. So let's transition to the running backs. Sticking with Sean Payton, I'm picking up Audric Estime. After this week's waivers, he is 46% owned. So he's still probably out there in some of your leagues. The waiver wire at running back is usually very thin. But this rookie, he's taking over as the lead running back for Denver. Like Sean Payton, as you said with Bo Nix, he is totally willing to heavily utilize his young players. And right now, he's definitely worth stashing. Last week, he had a career high 14 carries to Javonte Williams, 1 carry. And plus, Estime got those crucial late game touches in a close game that they needed to win. He's clearly gaining trust with the coaching staff. And if this continues, I could see him taking over this backfield as the season goes on. Next, I would go with Trey Benson. He's only 30% owned. I've been saying to pick him up the last 2 weeks, Steve, on this show as a speculative ad. Now is the time you need to get him on your roster. He's getting close to 30% of snaps the past 2 weeks, and the Cardinals have a bye week this week, so you can get him pretty cheap and just stash him on your roster. Next, I'm going with Gus Edwards. If Edwards, he gets 10 carries and the goal line work, he's going to be a flex option going forward. If Dobbin goes down with injuries, Edwards can be an every week RB2. And with his run-heavy offense, like he is the ultimate handcuff. So out of those guys, which ones do you like, and do you have any to add?
Well, who doesn't love watching a rookie running back get an opportunity to potentially break the football world? So Audric Estime, I think, is one of the tastiest guys to get, and it's just enough juice where it's like, okay, I'm a little nervous to put him in there, right? He's getting his first real work, but he played at Notre Dame, so he understands what it's like to have a lot of eyes on you. So I don't think the moment is going to be too big for him. I just worry that, like I said, Sean Payton is kind of rough around the edges. I'm worried that if he makes a mistake, he could be banished to the shadow realm. I don't think that's going to happen. I trust that he's a good enough player, but that does worry me a bit, but that's why he's still out there. I mean, it's exactly why you're doing this. You know, if you're taking a chance on a guy, who better than to watch a guy get his first work, because nobody knows if he's that guy yet. Gus Edwards, I don't agree with, but it's not because you're not putting up good points there. If he does get everything you said, 10 carries and goal line work, absolutely, he is worth a flex. But I was a guy who was betting against J.K. Dobbins, so maybe I'm just like once bitten, twice shy. I think that Gus Edwards has kind of burned me. So I think I would lean more towards Trey Benson because he scares the you-know-what out of me as a James Conner manager because he is good. He's dynamic. James Conner is severely underrated. I think anybody would agree that he is not talked about enough in the top upper echelon of running backs, but there's a reason. He just doesn't do anything great. He does everything pretty good. So you know what you're going to get out of him. But Trey Benson has shown flashes of being really, really good. And that scares me as a dynasty manager of James Conner. I'm trying to hold on to what I feel like is a treasure, and I feel like it's slipping out of my hands because Arizona's offense seems like something has clicked over the past 3 weeks. And because of that, we could see some youthful energy injected into that offense.
Love it. Yeah. And another thing with Estime is he's getting 5 yards a carry this whole season. The only reason people were off of him after the combine was because of his speed score. But you know else who had a bad speed score was Kyron Williams. And look what he's doing. But yeah, let's go to the receivers. So if you're looking for a receiver, I hate to say it, but MVS, don't expect him to repeat last week's performance. All right. But he is worth an ad. He caught 2 touchdown passes last week, and the Saints are dealing with that injury bug at wide receiver. So he does have occasional upside going forward. I just can't trust a guy who only got 3 targets and scored 2 touchdowns. I can't do that on a weekly basis.
It's not sustainable. Yeah.
No, it's not. A guy that I like to add, Noah Brown, like this is 3rd week in a row. Him and Terry McLaurin led the team in snaps, and it's the 3rd week in a row he's gotten 6 or more targets. Like with this bye week chaos approaching with us, we got 10 teams on bye over the next 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Brown doesn't have his bye week until week 14. But if you need a solid fill-in the next couple weeks, I think with his usage, he could be your guy. Some other guys notable, we got Jerry Jeudy. He may post decent PPR numbers regularly, just with Winston throwing the ball often. Then you got Christian Watson, who I picked up this week in a redraft. He was targeted 13 times in the last 2 games before Green Bay's Week 10 bye. So that could be a guy you want to add. And I don't know if I this one kills me, but Xavier Legette, like this rookie should see a lot of targets as the top receiver for the Carolina. It's just hard to trust Bryce Young.
Off topic, I like the way Legette talks. It's like a David Chappelle skit, you know?
But like he is going to be the number 1 target. He's got that deep threat, like big playability. So I guess you can add them and see what happens. So out of those guys, which ones do you like, and do you have any to add?
There's a couple of things I want to address. So number 1, Xavier Legette is a treasure. Any interview he has, it's just entertaining. I love it. I want more of it. So if anybody out there has any sort of access to him, get him on a camera. It's so fun. Yeah. MVS reminds me of late career Deshaun Jackson. He's going to do one thing, and he's really good at it if he catches the ball. So it's like you said, the 3 catches for 2 touchdowns, that's not sustainable. But boy, when it happens, it is so fun. And I'm a gambler. So if I'm really, really looking for something and I'm like, you know what, this guy's got a better team than me and I need a guy, I'm throwing in this big play, boom or bust. But I have been busted many times by MVS. So I get the cringe when talking about him. But, Deshaun Jackson in that late stage, he had some value, but it was kind of the same thing. He's either going to go 80 yards for a touchdown or he's going to have 6 targets and no catches. There's nothing in between. Noah Brown, I loved your point about the bye weeks, and I would like to double down on that. Because of this bye week Armageddon we're going through over the course of the next 2 weeks, I want players on good offenses. And we have seen the Washington Commanders come out of what's seemingly nowhere. New owner, new me. We're a high-powered offense now. We are in the 2020s, and we're going to throw the ball deep with our super athletic rookie quarterback. I think that Noah Brown does have some sustainability, and because he's the number 2, he's going to have some good matchups. Everybody's worried about Scary Terry, and rightfully so. He's going to be in our betting part of this a little bit later. Spoiler alert. So I do believe that Noah Brown does have some long-term, maybe not long-term, but short-term over the next 2 weeks, some viability and can help the rosters win. And then I forget who the other one was, but I'll go into Xavier Legette a little bit. Xavier Legette has been serviceable over the past couple of weeks. I'm afraid with Thielen coming back, targets will go away, but it also, in the inverse, could help him. Bryce Young, with as many options as possible, he can't have all of them. He can't bring all of them down. I do think that maybe this early season benching can kind of put a new perspective on there. I know there was a report that came out that he was pretty devastated by the news. And I like to believe that athletes of his caliber, and he is in the NFL, so we need to address that. He is a good player. He's just not performing the way he was lauded to be coming into the draft. But I like to think that people take looks at themselves in the mirror and try to improve. And Bryce Young is still young enough that he can make those adjustments. We just got to see him translate. And I didn't think he was terrible last week. I just don't think that – I think we need to just tamper the expectation. The Panthers are a bad football team, so at times we're going to see bad football. But they do have some good players. I think Leggett is a guy who will exceed expectations when given the opportunities. But I'm with you. You don't know what you get with Bryce Young, but I still think he's probably one of the safer plays of the group that you listed.
Love it. So let's transition to the tight ends. Pat Freiermuth, he's 51% owned on Sleeper. And I'm expecting like a higher scoring game between the Steelers and the Ravens. So Baltimore, they do rank 30th in receiving yards allowed to tight ends. So if he's out on your waivers, he could be a guy that you can add. And I'm sticking with Hunter Henry. I've been saying this the past 2-3 weeks, man. He's still only 40% or 50% owned. He played 57 of 64 snaps and ran 25 of 29 routes. That was the second most for any of the Patriots pass catchers behind Kayshon Boutte. So if he's out there, I would not leave him on your waivers. Next, you can add Jonnu Smith. He's the third target on the team, but he's athletic enough to where he has some value with his limited targets. So you can start him in a pinch. And then the Canadian rookie, Theo Johnson, you got to consider adding him just because Johnson was targeted 6 times in each of his past 2 games. So that could be something looking up. It's just Daniel Jones. I don't know what's going to happen with him. I hate Daniel Jones trusting the pass catchers, but that's just someone you can consider. Then this one's a little bit deeper, Dawson Knox. So with the Bills facing key injuries on their offense, and that's including with that knee injury with Dalton Kincaid, Knox could be a useful 1-week fill-in if you need someone to put in your lineups this week. And that's pretty much it for tight ends. So what do you have to say, Matthew?
Well, the first 2 you mentioned, I feel like should be rostered in 100% of leagues, even if you don't start them. Pat Freiermuth has been a good tight end. I'm just as shocked as everybody else about this Pittsburgh passing offense. When Justin Fields got there, I think everybody thought, okay, here we go again, same old Pittsburgh. 7 or 8-8 or 9-8, I guess now because there's an odd number of games. But you're always going to have that winning record with Mike Tomlin, but it's going to be 1 game over 500. It's going to be boring. It's going to be 13-10. But that offense is legit. That offense is legit. I'm a Bengals fan, so that hurts me to say out loud. But that offense is nothing to scoff at, and Freiermuth has been very serviceable. And then I actually have a situation in a league where I have Sam Laporta and Hunter Henry, and let me tell you, that decision is not as chalk as you might think it is. Hunter Henry has been phenomenal this year, and tight end as a whole feels like it's not been good. I'm going to try to be as nice as possible. I'll say some nice things about tight ends, but let's be real. There has not really been a dominating tight end outside of maybe Brock Bowers and Trey McBride, but everything else has just kind of been a crapshoot. I'm a Mark Andrews truther, and my goodness, he's been difficult to roster in leagues. But Hunter Henry has been reliable, and it looks like him and Drake May have some chemistry. And I think that goes a long way for a rookie. He has to have people to trust. He's still learning the NFL. Quarterback is the same, but it is completely different from college to the NFL. So I think finding comfort with players and then peppering them with targets, that is going to be how you win fantasy matchups. After those 2, I think it's kind of a crapshoot. I think you can get and I like the Dawson Knox take. I always look for short-term windows because obviously in the long term we want players that will last the whole season. But you need to win the week you're in, and by getting players in the short term who have opportunities to spike, if you can get there beforehand. It's kind of like the stock market thing. You've got to get there while it's rising. Don't get there when it's at the top and falling. And Dawson Knox right now would be on the rise. But it's kind of weird. The Buffalo Bills and the tight end this year have not really jived that well, but I do believe that you will see a spike with him, although there is a risk there because I'm a Dalton Kincaid guy too, and my goodness, I'm telling you, tight end makes me want to pull my hair out of my head.
Yeah, I love that. You mentioned Mark Andrews. You know, him and Hunter Henry are back to back in the overall rankings. Like Andrews is 8th overall and Henry's 9th overall for tight end.
It's amazing too, because Mark Andrews, I mean, my goodness, it felt like he was DOA the first 4 weeks.
Yeah.
Like I was seriously considering in dynasty leagues offloading him. Thank goodness the diamond hands prevailed. I think it was probably pride over brain, to be honest with you, at that time. But I'm very, very lucky that he's turned the season around.
Yeah, I actually bought him in week 4 or 5, like after he had that double zeros.
Yeah.
And then he had like a 9-point game. I bought him and I traded. Someone offered me Tucker Kraft straight up for Mark Andrews. I was like, hell yeah, I'm pushing this up on that. Steve, that's all I got for streamers for offense. Why don't you guys hit your defense?
You know what's interesting when you're talking offense, it goes in like a batting order, depth chart. Defense, it's all over the place, especially the way me and Matthew play. We're trying to stream. So Matthew, situation, you're on the clock, it's 4th down, 2-minute warning. You got one play left. You got to punt for a guy. Who's your dart throws this week? Who you looking at? Waivers are gone. What's out there in your leagues?
All right. So I started with defensive line because you're right. With defense, man,
right.
You can go so many different places, so many different positions. I'm going to try to keep it as simple as possible. Defensive line, I went one from each. I went one from the edge and I went one from the defensive tackle position. So that way we get kind of all flavors on defense. So the defensive lineman who I'm putting out there is Dante Fowler. Okay. Dante Fowler, actually, a few weeks ago on the notes that you described that I put on Twitter, the first thing I said was, do not fall for the Fowler flirtation that you are getting right now. He does this every year where he has like one gigantic game and then everybody goes, oh, here it is. He's finally figured it out. We've been doing this for the better part of 8 years. And I said it, don't do it. But then another week goes by, and I'm like, okay, I'm just going to take the L here. He's on a hot streak like nobody's business. Washington Commanders football team has a level of confidence that I think that you need to ride. He is a boom bust player. All right. So he's sack dependent. And I'm not usually a sack dependent kind of guy. I like consistent and safe tackle floors. I feel like that's how you build your foundation of an IDP team. But if you need somebody for a streamer and you need a big week, he's the type of guy right now. He has been all over the place, and he is their best pass rushing threat currently, in my opinion. And then to go on to the next one, the defensive tackle is Grover Stewart. The Indianapolis Colts pass rush has been okay. It's not been great. It's not been bad. But they get a lot more done on the interior than they do on the edge rushing. And Grover Stewart and DeForest Buckner are the reason why. But the reason I took Grover Stewart, obviously DeForest Buckner is never going to be on waivers. But DeForest Buckner takes up so much attention from the defense that Grover Stewart is going to get more one-on-one opportunities. And we have seen time and time again, he wins those opportunities. The last 3 weeks, he's got 18 tackles and 3 sacks. He rarely has a bad game. And then you're seeing that potential over a 3-week span. Those are the type of players that you want to go after if you're looking for somebody to just throw in a lineup. There is nothing wrong with playing a defensive tackle when he's putting up numbers like this. It's not the sexiest position, but they're easier to find. And if you get a good one, it's a diamond in the rough. What do you think, Steve?
If I may, I just want to throw a couple counterpoints in here. For those on Apple Podcasts, welcome in. For those on Spotify, can't see screen, welcome in. Those on iHeartRadio, welcome in. If you're on YouTube, you're in for a treat. I got Jamie with me. I got Matthew from Football Guys. We're talking about IDP. We're talking about offense. We're talking about Thursday night betting. What I have on my screen right now is the IDP Center. The IDP Center, you can go on idpcenter.com. It's an interactive site. They have over 350 managers. They do betting, they do offense, they do defense, they have best ball drafts, they have all sorts of stuff. They're running a promo code right now. If you want to get in this, if you type in IDP Hunter, you get an additional 10% off over at the idpcenter.com. They actually will do kind of like a dynasty report or a rookie age report. It's 8 pages long, Matthew, and it'll pull up all of your stuff. I'm in their Discord. I'm on there talking smack. I'm in a couple leagues. One thing
That's
I'm proud of,
subscription alone, brother.
Yeah. One thing I am proud of, I do the defensive lineman start of the week, and a couple of these weeks, both of your players I have referenced. One thing I like about Fowler, it took him a long time to get together, to get this figured out. He's a veteran, former first-round draft pick. He's only owned in 18% of leagues right now. Historically, he is a boomer bust player, as you said. Historically, but for the last 5 games, he's only played 5 this year. He's gotten 8 sacks, a forced fumble recovery, and interception. But for some reason right now, he's trucking some tackles if you watch him. He's got 18 total tackles on the year. 5 games, couple points a game. That adds up, especially 1, 2, 3 scoring, which are the leagues me and Jamie like. You get 2 points a solo tackle. That actually builds up. I love that pick, Fowler. I wrote an article about him a couple weeks ago. The other player you mentioned, Grover Stewart. A lot of people shy away from defensive tackles, don't they, Matthew? They shy away. Grover plays in that 3 technique. Sometimes the 1, he kind of shades over. What does that mean? Transition. When a team runs, they run to the in between the tackles. He gobbles up a lot of tackle points. So if you're in a tackle premium league, Grover Stewart is a really cheap defensive tackle to own. Jamie, in that 32-team league that we have, Grover Stewart's a guy that I always target because he's owned nowhere, right? Perfect definition of a streamer. Perfect definition of a streamer. And if I can just throw one more thing out here, shout out to Joe Bond yet again. Joe Bond has this thing that he does over at the Six Pack. It's called the IDP points against. It's a calculator. It's a chart. It's basically saying, hey, I'm looking at my team. I'm looking at who are they playing this week? You look at the matchups. We've all seen these before. Nothing special, right? Well, what Joe did, I'm pulling it up on my screen now just to give context. What Joe did, he actually pulled this thing and he did it based on your scoring of your leagues. So Joe has this chart over the Six Pack. It's a free chart. Anybody can look at it. Anybody can see. It's the IDP points against. You go down, you look, and you can actually do it by defensive lineman, by linebacker, by defensive back. And you can actually look at the matchups based on your scoring. So shout out to Joe Bond. Leave it to an offensive guy to finally fix the defense. But there's something in this for everybody. All these tools kind of translate to these kind of players. And I'm so glad you brought up Grover Stewart because looking at this chart, he's got some sweet matchups. And in 2 out of the next 3 weeks, he's got the Jets, he's got the Patriots. They're on a bye, but then they get Denver, Tennessee, the Giants, and the Jaguars. So in the next 5 out of 6 games, he can eat. I like those. I'm going to throw 2 more at you, if you don't mind. There's some guys out there that are still pretty much under-owned everywhere. Mm-hmm. There's a guy, Jonathan Cooper. He's owned in less than 30% of leagues. He's the lead guy in Denver because they traded Baron Browning away. He has had a sack. Well, the tweet I wrote, he has a sack. It's technically a half a sack. A half a sack or more, 6 out of the last 10 games. He was the highest defensive lineman week 1. People are forgetting about this guy, maybe because he's in Denver. And the other guy I want to throw in here, he's only owned in 19% of leagues, Yaya Diable. He's a hybrid DL linebacker. He gets 60% snap share every single week, and he's on a tear right now. Since he's been back, he's been gobbling up sacks left and right. So, again, if you're punting the defensive lineman position, which is something I do for DL2s and 3s, neither one of these guys is wrong, Matthew.
Nope, I don't think so either. I love your Yaya pick there. I think that when you got a guy that's an athletic freak, that he can play both linebacker and defensive line in the NFL, I don't care how to get him. I want him on my team because especially if you get that dual position. I know some fantasy sites allow you to play him in either spot, which is just a cheat code if you can get a guy like that on your DL. Love those picks. Denver, I do think people forget about Denver. I think it's just because they expect them to be, maybe they're just a boring team to watch. Maybe that's what it is. Maybe I got Midwest bias, but I just feel like they don't do a lot and they just kind of mess. So you don't think about how good their good players really are. You just kind of go, oh, wow, Denver won again. Or, oh, wow, Denver almost beat this good team again. Like last week against the Chiefs, it was like that was a good game. And Denver almost got a win against an undefeated Super Bowl champ, back-to-back Super Bowl champ team. So I think maybe it's just the Denver stigma right now, but I do believe that Sean Payton's going to get that off.
Heck yeah. Over at the RPO network, I do an article every week. They call it the Every Down Linebacker article. I'm pretty proud of this one, Matthew and Jamie. It's kind of like we take every linebacker core, we pull the snap share, we pull the points. And like I said, there's a lot that goes involved in this. And then we kind of talk about the different rotations. So over at the RPO, I do a couple articles, but this is my favorite one I do. It's the Every Down Linebacker. We're also doing a promo code over there. If you guys are interested in award-winning rankings, Leo has been the number one guy for the last 2 years. He's currently number one right now. I myself am number 4. Yeah, I myself am number 4. Mace is in the top 15. So you got 3 top 15 IDP rankers on Fantasy Pros. Check these guys out. We have a promo code over at RPO Football. If you type in the word Hunter, you get $10 off full season access. That goes to our award-winning rankings, our articles, and, of course, the betting show. Matthew, we're going to have Tackle Box props on in a couple weeks around Thanksgiving. I'm excited. And I'm excited for that as well.
You want to make some money, follow that guy. If you want to make some gambling money on defensive players, man, follow him. He's a good follow. And shout out to you, Steve. You got your own promo code. Big time now, brother.
I have a couple of them. Yeah. So I kind of just put them in. But yeah, this is the second one. The RPO football. Yeah. So again, that code he's talking about, if you just type in IDP, if you type in Hunter, you get $10 off full season access. I'm going to kick it back to you for some linebackers. What do you see? What do you like? Who's streamable out there?
Well, I hope I'm not too late to the party here, but Jack Gibbons might be a true league winner. I know we throw that term around all the time. Every little person that gets a start and has a big game is a league winner. But Jack Gibbons has been popping off in the 2 games since Ernest Jones was traded for the second time in the same season. 29 tackles in 2 weeks. I'm going to say it one more time because it still blows my mind. 29 tackles in 2 weeks, bro. You're not getting guys that have 15 tackles a week. That does not pop up in week 10. It just doesn't happen. So put any amount of fab you need to put on this guy to get him on your team. Even if you don't have the stomach to start him, I get it. I don't know why you wouldn't, but I get it. But Jack Gibbons has the opportunity now, and he is young in Tennessee. Tennessee is in the middle of a weird rebuild, okay? They've got a new coach, a new play style. Their best player, arguably in the franchise's history, left. So there is a lot of different things going on in Tennessee, and I believe that he is the next big thing on their defense. They have a defense that is kind of lacking of stars. I mean, we've got a couple of guys here and there that you could argue, okay, well, he's really good or he's good. I believe that Jack Gibbons is going to take the IDP world by storm. I think he is showing us in his first real audition. He had a good year last year, but he didn't necessarily stay on the field as much as you would like to see from a linebacker. This year, he is performing. He's getting a lot of snaps, and I'm a dynasty guy. The dude is super young, so you got to get a hold of him while you can. I think he is a no-doubt streamer. He's probably not going to be available after this week if he's still available this week. But one who I do believe will be available is the rookie Omar Speights for the Los Angeles Rams. Last week, he led his team in tackles as a rookie. Okay, that's hard to do. I don't care what position you play. If you lead your team in tackles, you're doing something right. Now, hopefully, you're not getting burned in pass coverage to get those tackles like some corners do. But I do believe that Speights is going to excel because he's getting an opportunity to play in the absence of Troy Reeder. Reeder, I believe, is on IR for one more week. So Omar is going to have one more opportunity to kind of give you some points. But like I said, he led his team in tackles last week. He's going to have one more opportunity where he's going to play the most snaps. And last week, he played the most snaps at the linebacker position. That includes Christian Roseboom. So that's a pretty big deal as well. Get Omar Speights. I think he's a good streamer. I think it's probably more short-term, and Jack Gibbons is more of a long-term solution. But I do believe that both of them can give you some value this week specifically.
Yeah, I love both of those, and I actually wrote about those in my Every Down Linebacker article as well. With Gibbons, what was the stat you said the last 2 weeks? He's been on a tear, right?
Absolutely. 29 tackles.
So if you want to do the math, he did 14 tackles 2 weeks ago, and he figured, you know what? Let me do one more. Let me just add 15, one for good luck last week. He's on a tear. 29 tackles 2 weeks. You know what he's done the last 3 weeks, Jamie? 37 tackles. 37 tackles 3 weeks. I picked him up 2-3 weeks ago because I couldn't call it. Remember, there was a whole trade situation there. They moved on from Ernest Jones, and it was a whole chaotic thing. I'll get to that in a minute because Ernest Jones is going to pop up in my brain in a second here. But anyway, Gibbons is only owned in 22% of leagues. He's a tackle monster. But you know what's left out of the feel-good story here? The coaching staff believes in him, and that's all you need to know. But also, PFF has him down for just one missed tackle. That's it. One missed tackle during this whole time. He's going to be producing. He's going to be the guy. He's put Cedric Gray. He's put Jerome Baker. They're afterthoughts right now. They're afterthoughts right now. They're not being used at all. You mentioned Omar Speights, and I like that take. Omar Speights has been our PFF darling. He's been the guy that everyone's been kind of looking at. Everyone's been thinking about. He hasn't been getting many snaps last couple of weeks. If you study him, he's got a nose for the ball. Hence, that's why he gets all these PFF high grades because he's there. Just hasn't been getting the stats. They've been yanking him out on passing downs. That's what you do for younger players. Last week, we finally seen it switch. He got a healthy snap share, and he rewarded us. Omar Speights, there it is right there. He got 73.6% of snap shares. Rosenboom didn't. Rosenboom's back to being a two-down player, and then he rewarded us all with those 8 solid tackles. So I'm expecting a little more out of that. I kind of need him to do that, to be honest. Because, I'm in places where I punt the linebacker or I punt the running back, so I kind of need him too. But, yeah, he's doing good things with his snap share. Congrats to IDP owners that picked him up and guessed that right. So kudos to you guys. I love those 2 picks for this week. And you're right. I think owners can get away with it maybe a little bit longer. But Gibbons, this is probably your last week to get him if you're going to be able to get him, depending on how shallow your league is. I'm going to add to this a little bit here. There's a guy in the Chargers named Deion Henley, and honestly, it may be too late. It may be too late. That's what I wrote in my waiver article. This is it, the last stop. If you don't have them, you ain't getting them because we know historically the Chargers linebacker core has been changing like a spare tire. We know this. Well, because of injuries, he's been the last guy standing the last couple of weeks. So he became the only down player. Henley's been solidly producing, but this week he blew it up. Henley became the LB2 this week in 1-2-3 scoring, which is what we mostly play in. He had 13 tackles. He's logging over 85% of snaps or greater the last 3 games. He's another one. He's produced 36 tackles over 3 games. He's got the stats. I feel dirty telling people that this is a streamer because he's owned in 31% of leagues. That's only going to be true 2/3 of the time, but he may be out there. And I'll throw one more at you. This guy's owned in 21% of leagues. Jelani Tavai of the Patriots. The reason this is significant, he's more of a flex play, but he does get on the field. He's played 79% or greater snaps 9 out of the last 10 weeks. He's a volume guy. Look at what's going on with that linebacker core. You have Bentley hurt. You have Roquan McMillan they waived. And Christian Ellis has been on again, off again, injured. You take all that away, he's got LB1 responsibility. Now, I throw caution in the wind with the audience. He's an LB1. This week he was LB9 1-2-3 scoring. He did not 7 tackles, 2 assists, 1 sack, pass deflection. But I consider him a flex because here's where the caution lies. The green dots on this team are the defensive backs, whether it's Mapu, whether it's Duggar. Those are your defensive backs. Those are your green dots on this team. Those are the guys that come down, make all the plays. He's a linebacker to own, yes. He's probably in my IDP formats. He's a flex play, but he's a little bit of a deeper thought. But those are my 2 linebackers I'm trying to stream. I know you mentioned your 2. Do you have anybody else for this category?
Well, I want to double down on Deion Henley. He absolutely needs to be owned in 100% of leagues. There's no reason in the world that guy should be on waivers. He needs to be on your team and in your lineup. That guy has been phenomenal this year in his first real season of starting. Jim Harbaugh plays an old school style of football, and what is one thing that all old school coaches love? A solid middle linebacker. Deion Henley is absolutely a must start. So I'm with you. It does feel dirty talking about him as a streamer because he could potentially be a top 5 dynasty linebacker next season. He's absolutely worth anything you can do to get him. Tavai is interesting to me too. I love the fact that he has sack upside. He gets tackled, but he will rush the quarterback. And like you said, the Patriots, I don't think that they were prepared for Bentley to get hurt like he did. Bentley was a rock star last season, and I think he was covering a lot of holes on that unit for the team. And like you said, Raekwon McMillan, he kind of took over to start, but he wasn't good enough to keep that job, and he wasn't even good enough to keep his own job. So they waived him, and now there's really a lot of indecisiveness in that line. But the one constant, even before Bentley, was Tavai. And Tavai is there. He's going to stay. The team trusts him. He has that veteran leadership. And like you said, he's kind of a risk because he's not playing the green dot, so they will take him off the field. So that is something that will happen. So I like both of your guys, but I am like super, super high on Daiyan Henley. Get him on your team. If you listen to anything on this show, Daiyan Henley needs to be on your roster and starting in your lineup.
Before we do our last category, defensive backs, I was just thinking of something. Over at the IDP Center, we talked about the promo code, get 10% off if you type in IDP Hunter. You get custom league analysis. They have a trade calculator, Matthew, and that thing is the bee's knees. I mean, again, I see calculators that are so broke. You have Justin Jefferson worth the same as TJ Watt. What the heck? That doesn't make sense. Then I go to another site and Justin Jefferson is or TJ Watt's worth the same as Deion Henley. Like, where is the equal attitude? So that calculator is important. That trade site's important. That value is important. So anyway, check this out. What I like about this site that made me just bring this up, it's a lot different than some of the leagues I play in. There's one right now. It's a 20-team league. Best ball they got me in. 8 points of pass deflection. You got to start 6 defensive backs. In those kind of leagues, defensive backs are valuable. So I'm constantly throwing dart throws at defensive backs because I don't really care. I'm constantly throwing dart throws. But in this case, in leagues like this, in these kind of formats, defensive backs are valuable. So, you'll see a lot of those guys go early, but I'm constantly checking the waiver wire for defensive backs. I say that. The reason I say that is because a lot of times I say defensive backs, whatever, but there are some good value at defensive backs, especially this late in the year. What are some of the players that you have?
Well, I am going to come out and say that you're gonna roll your eyes when I say this, but I am a cornerback hater. So I do not often put corners on my team unless it's necessary. However, there are some exceptions to every rule. Like you said, if you have a league that rewards scoring in that caliber of like defended passes, you're going to want guys that are on the receivers at all times. So corners become ultra valuable in leagues like that. But I started with a corner because you know what, Steve? I love you to death. So I want to give you one of your favorites here. Kenny Moore. The Indianapolis Colts corner. When he's on the field, quite frankly, he is one of the best IDP corners in the entire league. But a lot of people don't value corners, so his roster percentage is probably going to be lower than it should. He plays a very good schedule upcoming. He plays a pass-happy, wobbly Jets. He has back-to-back huge weeks. He had 13 tackles, a fumble recovery, interception, 2 defended passes, and a touchdown over the course of the last 2 weeks. That's a mouthful. If you didn't catch all that, he's been a beast. So get him on your team because he's just one of those guys. He's always going to be on the field for the Colts when he's healthy because he's one of their best defensive players. But at the same time, he's not so good like a shutdown corner that people won't throw at him. He's the perfect balance of good player, but not too good that he scares the quarterback. So they will try to test him, but he is good enough to make quarterbacks pay, and I believe that adds to his value at the cornerback position. But my favorite position on the football field, on the defensive side of the ball, is the safety. You have to be strong enough to hit a running back coming full speed right at you and take him down, but athletic enough to keep up with the Justin Jefferson and the Jamar Chases of the world. And that's why I think that safeties are so undervalued in the game of football. You have to be able to do it all. And a guy who does that on this list or has shown us a lot lately is Taylor Rapp of the Buffalo Bills. Taylor Rapp, he's kind of bounced around a little bit. He was on the Rams. Now he's on the Bills. The Bills have always had very good safeties. They had the Jordan Poyer and Micah Hyde combination for a long time, but they've since moved on from both. We're seeing some new people there. Taylor Rapp has had a really, really good last few games. Since he came back in week 5 from an injury, he has not missed a snap. And in IDP, I think we all agree that the most important thing that you can look for are players who are playing in the game. And like I said, he's not missed a snap. So you know he's going to be there and he's important to that defense. But at the same time, he has a safe tackle floor. Since week 5, when he came back, he's had 5+ tackles in every game. And he just had a big game against the Kansas City Chiefs. Or I'm sorry, he has a big game coming up against the Kansas City Chiefs. I think that Patrick Mahomes is going to try to duel with Josh Allen. We always get that type of game with them. And I know we don't trust the Chiefs right now, and we don't maybe trust the Bills' pass options right now because of injuries, but I still believe that these guys are going to try to outduel each other. And if that's going to happen, I want corners and I want safeties in this game in my lineup.
So, you know what's funny? You just say, oh, I know you don't like cornerbacks. Just to give you a different take, I am going to give you a cornerback. I'm going to throw one at you right here. I like to go deep. I like to go to deep when I'm talking about this position because I don't like to spend any premium on it. There's a guy right now. He's only owned in 3% of leagues. I'm going to spell this name for you because Lord knows I'm going to screw it up. I think it's Ugo Amadi. I spell Ugo Amadi. New Orleans Saints owned in 3% of leagues. Okay. He's a slot player. We know that team historically is very lucrative for whatever player plays the slot. We also know in recent news, Marshawn Lattimore got traded to the Commanders, right? Yeah. Ugo Amadi is the next man up. He's the next man up. Matthew's laughing at me. He's like, who is this guy? He did play this week. He got 9 tackles. He's playing in that sweet spot. And you know what? Sometimes talent doesn't necessarily matter as opposed to the scheme. The Saints are the only team in the NFL that run a cover 5 defense. You Madden players, y'all know what a cover 2 is, a cover 1 is, a cover 3 is, maybe even a cover 6. Cover 5 is old school. Basically what that is cover 2 man, but they playing it throughout the whole game. What that does is that puts pressure on the defensive ends and the slot corners to play like a linebacker role to cover those. So that's why you see a lot of times the Pete Warners, the Mario Davis, sometimes they're hit or miss. Sometimes they have big games. They're covering a lot of field. But in that cover 5, the way the Saints play it, those slot corners make plays. And this guy came out of nowhere, and I do mean nowhere, all year long, Matthew. He had one game of 10% snaps, another game of 29. They brought him in. They let him get 72 3 weeks ago. Last week, he had 100% snaps, produced 9 tackles. He's going to be a guy to own, definitely in quarterback leagues, maybe DB3 leagues. And this one's kind of cheating, too. I'm going to give you a safety, okay? Trevon Moehrig of the Raiders, 26% owned. Context matters. I posted this a couple weeks ago. He was on a tackle streak. He had 1 tackle. He had 38 tackles back then. 6 games in, he had 38 tackles, right? And he had 1 tackle ahead of Budda Baker. So again, safety is such a funny position. Back then, you're paying a premium top pick for Baker. This guy you could have punted, and he still had 1 more tackle. Currently, right now, I had to do the math to make sure I was correct. We're all the way in the season, he's on his 6th. He made his 65th tackle this week. So he's a tackle hound. He's making plays. He's on the Raiders. Very suspect defense the way it is historically. Those 2 players you can get for free. And if you can't get them, what's cool is you can go to your friends and be like, hey, Jamie, I'll give you a 4th rounder for Ugo Amadi. He'll be like, who? Who the heck's that? You might even give me Boye Mafe because the names are funny. Give me Boye Mafe too. Here, I'll give you $10 fob. Call it a day, right? So anyway,
I was actually going to say, Jamie, did you ever think that you were going to get piping hot Ugo Amadi talk on this show?
Yeah, no, I had no idea, but I love Steve throwing Boye Mafe out there because that is my guy right there, man. Love me some Boye Mafe.
Man, that is a deep one, Steve. I'm pumped. You did not disappoint. You went deep.
It's hard this time of year because you're either looking at injuries or you're looking at there's not too many breakouts after those first 5-6 weeks. You know what I mean? So a little tricky when you're going. But yeah, Ugo pulled it off last week, so he's worth mentioning here. You know what I mean? He's worth the yell. He's worth the bark. He's worth the roar, right? Hey, Jamie, for this category we got coming up, we're going to go into Thursday night. We're going to go prop betting. or did you want to do trends? How did you want to go? The floor is yours, my friend.
We could do some offensive stock up, stock downs for dynasties if you want. I know you're a stock up, stock down for IDP, but you are a genius in your own right for offensive. So I would like to get some of your takes on these guys. Stock up, man. Jaden Daniels. Definitely stock up because going into the season, he was outside the top 12 quarterbacks, right? I believe he was going around quarterback 14 or 15. I personally had him at quarterback 11. People said I was way too high. This guy never played a snap in the NFL. Why do you have him in your top 12? But now ECR has him at QB3. He's in that same tier as like Josh Allen, Lamar, and Hurts. Like I was a Daniels over Caleb guy going into the season. Like one of my drafts, I had the 111 in a single quarterback league, and I was like, "Oh, I'm smashing Jaden Daniels as soon as he gets to me." He went one pick ahead of me. I'm like, "God dang!" Caleb was available on my pick, and I'm like, "I don't want Caleb. Why would I want Caleb in a single quarterback league?" So I ended up passing on Caleb. But now, like considering that he is a top 3 quarterback, like, do you hold him? Or do you sell him at his highest price? Because I don't see him going any higher than QB3. Well, what do you think, Matthew?
Yeah, that's interesting. So if I was in a redraft league, I think it'd be easier to sell. You know what I mean? You got to, because you can maximize that value for some really serious assets. But then you got to look at the waiver wire and go, okay, is there a Bo Nix available? To go back to what we were talking about earlier. Because if you pick up a Bo Nix on there, the point differential over the next few weeks probably won't be enough, but you could probably pick up a nice wide receiver or a running back for a Jaden Daniels level player. So I'm kind of with you. You know, that's interesting take. You're the first person truly that I've ever heard say, what if I traded Jaden Daniels? And I think that's bold, but I also think that bold moves like that are how you win leagues, especially in short-term windows. So yeah,
I thought you were going to say, Matthew, I thought you were going to say he's the first person ever to call you a genius. That's what I thought you were going to say.
I wish I could say he was, man. I wish I could say he was.
But just for that dynasty stock market, though, like going from QB 15, now he's QB 3 or 4.
Yeah, I know his rise has been amazing. Can you believe we're getting those two tomorrow, Jalen Hurts and Jaden Daniels, in a nice primetime game? These Thursday games, for what they used to be, man, they are must watch now.
Mm-hmm. So on the opposite spectrum, you have Anthony Richardson, stock down. Like this guy's unpredictable, man. Like what did I say earlier? Rushing upside is king at quarterback, right? So we've seen it with Justin Fields. Like he's been fluctuating. So, like, going into the season, I've seen people rank him in like the top 5 dynasty quarterbacks and even top 5 redraft. I've had one person in the Scott Fishbowl, my co-host, Mike Hicks, at going for 2. He had him ranked at QB1 going into the season. What do we do with this guy? Like, do we hold him?
I think what the Indianapolis Colts showed us today is it's not over. I think that they're going to give him this year. And I think it was a serious sit down. Let's redirect. Let's get you a mindset. Let's show you what it's like to be a backup quarterback, because this is how you're playing for us right now. But as stable organizations do, they will ride out this rookie window and they're going to be like, okay, man, sink or swim. This is your opportunity. So if you're ever going to see a more motivated player, it'll be right now. And I think in the short term, like this next week or maybe 2 weeks, we could see a really good Anthony Richardson. But what scares me the most about this, he knows he's playing for his job. It wouldn't shock me if he was reckless running the ball, and we have seen him get hurt. He is not a very big player. I live in Indianapolis. You're going to have to – I know a guy who knows a guy, right, who saw him. He's not a big guy. He's just not. You wouldn't look at him and think this is a powerful quarterback in the NFL who's going to lead all these guys. But he is a very accurate player. Like he's a very – not accurate, I'm sorry. He's a very athletic player. He is a dynamic player at the position, and I do believe that there's value there. But as far as trending down, I'm with you, man. The expectations we had of him coming into this season, they're gone. You can't look at him as that same player anymore. Now you have to hope that he has a Justin Fields level window in him where, okay, he's good enough that he's going to be on teams. And when he's playing, I want him in my lineup. I think that's where we're at with him right now, but I wouldn't say he's anywhere close to that top 15 anymore.
Yeah, like we all knew coming in, he was a raw talent. Like I think people are kind of overreacting. I've seen people offer like 3rd round picks for him in Superflex leagues. That's insane. Like at that point, I would just hold him. Like I'm a gambler. So if someone offered me Anthony Richardson for a 2nd round pick, in a Superflex, I would probably take that. Because just like the stock market, I like to buy low and then I'll sell high. So I'll wait until his value increases. I'll hold him until he's worth multiple first again, and then I'm selling right away. So someone offered me what's his name, Penix, straight up for Richardson. I took the Richardson side. Like I know Penix, he hasn't played.
That's interesting, man. That's a tough one.
Yeah, he might not play for 2-3 years. So I'm like,
it's like the Family Guy bit where he's like, you could have a boat or you could have the mystery box. It could even be a boat.
Yep. So, but I do like
box can have a boat.
Yeah, he just needs to work on that accuracy a little bit. But for running back, my stock up is Kenneth Walker, baby. Like I remember, like in redrafts, people were drafting him at RB17 in drafts. We have a bold prediction show every year on Going for Two, and my bold prediction, I said he's going to be a top 10 running back at the end of the season. And I even went farther saying my crazy bold prediction, he's going to be a top 5 guy. And in Dynasty next year, he will be a top 5 Dynasty running back. Currently, right now, he's averaging 19.1 points per game. He's tied at RB5 with Bijan. And my question is, should Walker be considered a top 5 Dynasty running back? And if not, who do you actually have over him?
So I would say right now that I'm wishing against you because I'm a Charbonnet guy. But it's undeniable what Kenneth Walker is bringing to that offense. You're absolutely right. It was a bold take at the beginning of this season, but I think if you asked a bunch of people now, it's not so bold because he is showing us that he's going to get the run, and with the opportunities that he's getting, he will score you points. So I don't think it's bold at all anymore. I think it was a great call on your part, and I think it's something that I believe the Seahawks are going to continue to build their team on. The receiving options, believe it or not, outside of JSN are getting old. I mean, they've been there for a while. We've seen this iteration of that team. And I think what they're doing is they're preparing for the future by changing how their offense plays. They're doing a lot more of the running game. They do have a nice 1-2 punch with Charbonnet and Walker, but Walker has just been so dominating that Charbonnet is just one of those guys. When he got the opportunity, he played well, and I think it's because this offense is built to have high leverage running back points. So absolutely, I'm with you there. I think top 5 is very reasonable. I still think that might be bold. I think he's probably in that 5 to 8 range, but I don't think it's out of the question. And I think if you took him as like a running back 5 in a draft, I don't think anybody would scoff at you.
Yeah, so for Dynasty, let's think. You got Bijan, you got Hall, and you got Gibbs. Yep. You can't put Walker over those guys, right? But in the next tier, you're thinking A-Chain.
Yeah. He's been disappointing too, man.
Yeah. A-Chain's got that upside, but then you got Jonathan Taylor, who's getting up there in age. Barkley, who's obviously up there in age.
Barkley. That's what I mean. I think you have a great argument for that next tier, and I think it's just it's going to be like pizza toppings. You know, some people like pepperoni, some people like sausage, some people might like pierogies, right, instead of pizza. But that's
I got him doing it now.
So good, man. Yeah, I hope I'm allowed to come back after saying that, but I had to get one in there. I've been waiting.
Jamie comes around. I've been doing it for years. You're good. He loves it.
But I absolutely think I think you're doing exactly what makes this sport so great. It's preference. Do you have the stones to stick to your convictions? And kudos to you, it's working.
Yeah. So my stock down is Travis Etienne. So going into the season, he was considered one of the top 7 guys, right? 7, 8. He disappointed this year. Now he's considered around that RB15 range. And I could see him even going lower than that, just with Bigsby in that offense. They're giving him some run. He's just not consistent. So I remember during my rookie draft, I had the 101, and I sold the 101 and ETN for the 104 and Jahmyr Gibbs. And people at that time were like, "Oh, what are you doing?" I was like, "Well, I don't believe in Caleb Williams, man. I had a feeling I might be able to get Jaden Daniels at 104, but I had Malik Neighbors over Marvin Harrison Jr. So I was like, I guarantee I'm going to get Neighbors at the 104. So I made a trade. Now it actually worked out because I got Jahmyr Gibbs and Neighbors over ETN and Caleb. So in that situation, what would you have done?
Absolutely that. There's nothing else to add either. I think you did exactly what you need to do there. ETN, he was good. Like, he was okay last year. I wouldn't say he was good, but he was serviceable. But you can tell that Jacksonville has just kind of been a weird – it's like when you're playing Jenga and you start to see the tower sort of sway, right? And if one person hits that one block, it's all going down. I feel like that's what's happening right now with the Jaguars, and you saw it ahead of time. And, of course, getting Neighbors over Caleb Williams right now looks like the best possible deal you can make. But absolutely, he's trending down, and it's because we're watching him lose his job. That's what's happening. It's a matter of time. They may not do it in the middle of this season this year because they're the Jaguars, and they just don't make that type of play. They kind of wait too long for a lot of things. But I think ETN will have value for the rest of the year. But if I'm a manager and my trade deadline is not passed, I'm trying to move him for anything I can get in Dynasty.
Same. And I don't see him going up in the stock market until he gets a new contract on a different team. And who knows where that it could even go down at that point. So for wide receivers, so when I think stock up, stock down, like stock up, you could be like, oh, his value rose, right? Or you could be like stock up because I want to stock up this guy on all my rosters. So I wanted to bring up Jaden Reed. So I already stocked up on Jaden Reed during the rookie draft. I was getting him late second round, early third. Dude, when he fell to the third round in any of my rookie drafts, I threw out so many offers during the rookie draft just so I can get Jaden Reed. So I actually had 11 shares of him out of my 25 dynasty leagues. Right now, I only have 7 because I sold 4 of them. And I got some great offers, and I didn't sell them for cheap. I sold them for first-round picks, and I was getting them in the third round. So Jaden Reed is like a stock up because he went from that dynasty late second, early third. Now people are buying him for a first-round pick. So if you had Jaden Reed on your team, are you willing to sell him for that first-round pick? Are you holding him?
So that's interesting. I guess that for me would be probably roster dependent. As muddy as the Packers wide receiver waters can be, Jaden Reed has been the constant. He's been the lighthouse. You know what I mean? So I think that when you have a good quarterback and you have his number one option, that is never a bad thing. And we're seeing Jordan Love continue to ascend. We're seeing the Packers as a whole. It seems like they've got some cheat code where they just know how to get a Hall of Fame quarterback. Now, Jordan Love's not a Hall of Famer. I'm not going to say that right now. But the point is they went from Favre to Rodgers to now Jordan Love. Is there any greater stability at the quarterback position that we can go to over that last generation of like from the 90s to now? I don't think you can do it. And because of this, and because Jaden Reed is the number one receiver, to me, I look at it this way. If I had a first-round pick and I drafted a guy who turned into Jaden Reed, maybe he's not a first-round pick type of a player, but I'm not upset that that's what I got for that pick. So I would almost not do that one, not because I don't think it's a good deal. If you can get a first-round pick, that's always going to be good. But I look for players like Jaden Reed to start in my roster because not only does it give me stability, but it gives me that peace of mind. I know I'm not waffling on whether I should play that guy or not.
Yeah, agreed. So if you can get like a mid first, early first, I would do that. Late first, I would probably decline it. But like with me having so much exposure to him with 11 shares of them, I can tell you.
You got more to spare, man. I don't blame you. Get a little juice. Who doesn't like to make a trade?
Dude, someone offered me first and Higgins for Jaden Reed. And I looked at I was going to smash it, but I looked at his first, and it was in the top 5, like the bottom half. So I'm going to get like a top 5 pick and Higgins, and all I had to do was give up Jaden Reed.
Yeah.
So I
Jamie, if I may, you brought this up, and this is an interesting point. I can't think of many combo leagues I have, dynasty, bigger size, even the 32 teamers. I have more offensive players than I do defensive players. I try to balance it out, but I always have more offense. In my taxi stashes, you mentioned Jaden Reed. In my taxi stashes, I have more offensive stashed. Just guys like that, like you said, like the Reeds, the estimates. I'm just squirreling them all away because they have the potential to become a first rounder in less than a year, 2 years time. My defensive guys, unless they're like top in their draft class, forget about it. It's going to take time to develop. So I don't know if you guys do that, but in my taxis, I'm stashing any offensive talent that I could find.
Well, even in that same draft, I drafted 14 shares of Cedric Tillman, and I was about ready to give up on that.
Me too.
Until like 3-4 weeks ago, and now I'm loving it. I'm throwing out I'm trying to get second round.
I have a buddy who is a Cedric Tillman truther, and we have been busting him up for years. And let me tell you, the front running that this man is doing right now is unbearable. So Cedric Tillman, man, it feels like it's out of nowhere, but he's getting an opportunity and he's shining.
It's not really out of nowhere because like going into the draft, the only reason he fell to our rookie 3rd round picks was because he was injured that year before. So people were taking Jalen Hyatt, which was the same college team, just because he won the Bolifikoff Award. But the only reason he won that award was because Tillman was injured that year. So people were all over Jalen Hyatt. And I'm like, go ahead and take Hyatt. I'm going to take Tillman just because I know
Hyatt had that 6 touchdown game. So everyone remembers that. It was nationally televised, and the rest is history.
So I got a couple for my stock downs. I want to pick Chris Olave just because going into the season, he was ranked as a top 12 receiver. Now I see him outside the top 20, even 24 in some people's rankings. I think it has to do recently with the injuries, with his concussions. He had like 5 concussions that are actually known. Plus, he has a Derek Carr issue. That's why he fell. But he does got that talent. So if you can buy Olave at a stock down outside the top 24 receivers, I believe that could be a good buy right now. Just to wait and see if it increases, because the dude does have talent.
When you got a guy who's the best receiver on a bad passing offense, if we can see this, us Joe Schmoes who just talk about it with our fake teams, I guarantee you the guys getting paid millions of dollars to scheme against him also know that. So that's always going to be hard. They know that he is the focal point of the passing game outside of Kamara, but Kamara, I think, is in a tier of his own with players. But so with Olave, the injuries are starting to pile up, and it's like you said, these are the known concussions, okay? I'm not saying that the NFL hides anything. That's a ridiculous thing to say out loud. But there are times when I feel like you don't always recognize concussion symptoms, and I think that he's the type of player, he's just been more – that's speculative. I hate to do that, but it just doesn't sit well with me, man, when they start piling up different types of concussions, because now you're starting to talk about the health and safety of this player more than the play of the player. And when that becomes the focal point, it's like a Tua situation. Every time the guy, like he went for the tackle last week and he like led head first to the tackle, and it made everybody in the stadium cringe, because it's just like, man, you don't want to see guys like that go down. And Olave is not to Tua's level yet, but it's starting to get a little sad.
Love it. Yep. I want to bring up another stock down for receivers, Jalen Waddle. Like, this guy used to be an every week starter, right? But now I haven't seen more Jalen Waddle start sit questions ever. So like right now, his value, I still think it's higher than what his production is showing. But he is a guy that, like, he's uber talented. He's got that big playability. So I just don't know what to do with this guy. Like, is he a sell candidate before he falls, or is he a buy because maybe it can rise? Because he was another guy that was considered like a top 12, top 13 wide receiver going into the year. And now I see him outside the top 20. So what would you do with Waddle?
Well, I think he might be the rare player that you either both win the trade or you both lose the trade. You know what I mean? I think he's the type of guy where you could probably get a mid pick for, and then you whiff on the pick in the draft, and then Waddle's not good, and you both feel like, all right, it was fair, we both suck. Or have a player that maybe you buy low on, and then we see the production. I don't know what I'm more upset about, the fact that he's not performing well or the fact that we're not getting to see what I believe is the best touchdown celebration in all of football with the Waddle. All right. I know everybody loves the gritty, but man, when he was scoring, he's doing the Waddle. I just love a clever pun. Come on. But he's just the type of guy, he's kind of bumming me out. I'm kind of with you, man. He used to be a no doubt top 12. He is the guy you want to have. This year, it just feels like it almost feels like he's hurt or something. Like he's just not the same player. And I don't know if he just fell off the age cliff earlier than most people do, but it's ugly.
Yeah, so maybe it's just
I have to check the offense, but I feel like the scheme. I feel like they're giving 3 running backs a lot more interest than they are targeting the whole team. And then Jonu's getting play, right, Jamie?
Yeah, Johnny Smith. I talked about him earlier. So yeah.
Yeah, I did for football guys, I actually did the training camp report for the Miami Dolphins. And one of the things that I learned doing that report was Jonnu Smith, they look at him kind of like a chess piece. He's literally like, okay, you're going to line up in multiple positions. We're going to put you in situations that are going to make the defense uncomfortable. And maybe because of that, we're seeing defenses maybe scheme more towards Waddle because they don't trust that Jonnu Smith's going to get the ball. And Jonnu's had a pretty good year. So
what are you guys' observations?
So, yeah, we got the Thursday night game coming up. The Eagles at home versus the Commanders. All right, so the spread has the Eagles at -3.5. The over-under is 48.5. I like both of those. Like I'm taking the Eagles -3.5. I'd feel more comfortable doing the money line, but I think they can get that 3.5 points just because they're playing at home. And the over-under, I do like 48.5. I think this game will go over just because both offenses are smashing and both defenses aren't doing that great.
They're not.
Yeah. So the lines that I like, so Barkley, his line is 95.5 rushing. I'm smashing that over. The Commanders, on average, are averaging 116 yards per game to running back. The last 4 games, they face Steelers, the Bears, the Panthers, the Giants. None of them are elite talents that Barkley is. So I'm taking Barkley over. I even took him at 100+ yards. Just because Barkley has hit over 100 yards 3 of his last 4 games.
And on that note, that one game is the one I'm going to kind of stick with here. There's 2 talking points I wanted to mention to you, Jamie, and I'll give it to Matthew here. Barkley had that one game, right? He had that one game. I think it was the second lowest yardage of the year. Well, you're talking about the 66 yards, right?
Yeah.
He's still on pace for a 1,871 yard season, right? A big game like tonight, or tomorrow. This will air tomorrow, Thursday. The Commanders are 29th in rushing. They're 29th on rushing defense. So I see that too. I see him eating. And then I was going to throw one more at you. The Eagles, man, the defense since the bye, they've been number 1 EPA per game, number 1 explosive plays per game. What's the difference? They brought in Cooper DeJean to play that slot. He's been working it, man. He's been running it down. So kudos to both those teams, but both their defenses are suspect, like you said. So I like your Barkley pick. Who else do you got?
So Hurts, his rushing line is at 41.5, and I'm taking the over. And if you don't like the 41.5, you could do an alternate at 40+, because you know how Vegas is. He'll get 40, 41 just to miss that half a yard.
The house always wins.
But you got to think, like, Daniel Jones, he got like 54 yards versus the Commanders. Lamar Jackson got 40+ yards versus the Commanders. So why not take Hurts over 41.5? Daniel Jones faced him twice. His first game, I think he had 32 yards rushing. So, yeah, I'm smashing that 40+ on Hurts rushing.
I like it a lot, man.
Matthew?
I've got 4, and I want you to know I got skin in the game for this, so I'm riding it too, whoever's listening.
Love it.
I got Jalen Hurts passing yards, 224.5. I'm taking the over. He has thrown over 225 yards in 3 of the past 5 games. He's got all of his offensive weapons. We just talked earlier about Noah Brown and Scary Terry. He has a good set of weapons here, okay? Or, and I'm sorry, I went to the other side of the ball. I meant Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown. What am I doing here, man? See, I'm so excited. We're 90 minutes in. If you're still listening, this is probably the first mistake any of us have made. So Jalen Hurts he's on fire right now. The Eagles as a whole are on fire. They took the Bengals game to change their season, and ever since then, they have not looked back. So Jalen Hurts over 224.5. The next one, Zach Ertz over 3.5 catches. Who doesn't love a revenge game? And Zach Ertz didn't leave on bad terms, so it's maybe not revenge so much as a homecoming of sorts. So I think Zach Ertz is going to want to show out against his old team, and maybe it's not in the yardage or touchdown category, but I do think he's going to be involved in the game plan. I feel like Dan Quinn is the type of coach that's just going to look at his players and be like, hey, I want to get you one. I'm going to help you out. We'll help you. We're going to scheme some stuff for you. So I could see him getting more than 3.5 catches. I think that's an egregious number. So over 3.5. Life is too short to bet the under. And then finally, I got Terry McLaurin. I got 2 lines here for you. I've got over 4.5 catches and over 60.5 yards. Scary Terry's been on a tear. He's recording at least 6 targets in all but 2 games this season. Okay, so targets are the main thing that I look for here in over yardage. He's got to be able to be involved. It's not like MVS where I'm hoping that one play goes 80 yards. We know that Terry McLaurin's going to be a part of this offense. He's going to be a heavy part of the game plan. He's a volume guy that's going to catch stuff like that. He's also had 60 yards receiving in 5 games this year, and he missed the mark in 2 other weeks by single-digit totals. So he's hovering around that number in every single game this year. I believe he's also going to hover around this number again this week, but I also think he's going to go over. And if you really, really want me to put some skin in the game here, I'll let you know I parlayed him. So I want them all to hit. I'm that confident they are all going to hit. It's a nice, juicy little number. But, hey, don't take betting advice from a guy you probably don't even know.
Love it. So I 100% agree with the Terry McLaurin over 4.5 receptions plus the 60.5 yards. I believe McLaurin in all but one game this year, he's had like 4 to 10 receptions. So why not? And I absolutely love your Zach Ertz line because who else is there to throw to? Noah Brown? Yeah, we talked about him earlier, but he's a waiver wire guy, right? Who else is going to get the catches? It's going to be Zach Ertz against that defense. I have a couple other ones. So let's see. Dallas Goedert, his line is 3.5 receptions at 30.5 yards.
Oof.
Yeah, they haven't faced many talented tight ends to Goddard's caliber, but they average 4 receptions for 37 yards. So definitely take the over on Dallas Goedert.
I got a question real quick to interrupt. Was it the Commanders that picked up Lattimore?
Yeah, Commanders, but he's inactive.
Oh, he's inactive. Okay, I was going to say that could be something, but if he's inactive, don't worry about that.
So I do like the Jaden Daniels passing yards. It's at 226.5. He went over 200 in all but one game this year. So if you're scared about that 226.5, just take the alternate of 200 plus for Jaden Daniels. Because I think he's going to hit that. I did a parlay. It's a 10-leg parlay, and it's at 4,600, I believe, like plus 4,600.
Wow.
So, but it's safe. I'm taking the Eagles money line. I'm taking Jalen Hurts 25 plus rushing, Goddard at 25 plus receiving, Jaden Daniels at 200 plus passing. I'm taking the alternate over at the lowest possible alternate over, which is 38.5. Just because it's a Thursday night game, you never know what's going to happen.
Matthew, we see Jamie with a mansion background. We know it's real, and we know he hit. Okay.
Also, I took the Jalen Hurts 175 passing is his lowest alternate passing. Terry McLaurin, 50-plus receiving. A.J. Brown, 40-plus receiving. Devonta Smith, he's coming back. 25-plus receiving, that seems like a given. And then Saquon Barkley, over 70 yards rushing. I think he's going to hit over 100. But in my parlays, I play it safe. And I also think Barkley's going to get a touchdown. So you can add that.
That's the weakness of that defense.
Well, I got to come clean here. My betting guy is my little brother. I'm a terrible bettor. So I go to little bro. I said, hey, man, I need you to cook me up a winning parlay here. So that way we can all work this together. But I'll put some skin in the game. So that way I'm also with you here. So kudos, shout out to my little bro.
Nice. So when I do my like 7 to 10 leg parlays, I like to go with the alternate lines. When I do my 3 to 4 pick parlays, that's when I actually do the actual lines of their bets.
Love it.
So who do you think is actually going to win this game? Is it going to be the Commanders or is it going to be the Eagles?
I don't know, man. This is a tough one. I think that we're starting to see teams have tape on Jaden Daniels, which I do think worries me because, you know, when he's starting off hot, everybody knows he's a good player, but nobody knows what he's like in the NFL. So you're just going to scheme what you saw in college for the first few weeks. Now you're scheming what he does in the NFL, and you have really, really high caliber coaches. Maybe Sirianni's not in that type of a talk, but you've got tape on him now. And when you got tape, you have opportunities to kind of see what he likes, what makes him uncomfortable. I trust the roster of the Eagles more than I do the Commanders. I don't think that the Commanders are a bad team. I think that the Eagles just have a stacked roster on both sides of the ball. I think despite Sirianni's shortcomings, he is getting them to win games, and I think that's a value. And I think this could be another classic Thursday game where we get that kind of high-scoring drama, but I do think the Eagles pull away late, and I do think they cover that 3.5.
Yeah, I mean, I agree, Matthew. I mean, it wasn't that long ago when the Eagles were considered contenders, right? It just feels like right now, Thursday night game, national audience. In my opinion, the Eagles are starting to have some kind of continuity, some kind of rhythm. So I can see that as well. I don't know. I'm not really much of a gambler, but, you know, the Eagles keeping it close, you know, 28-21. I think the Eagles are going to beat them.
Yeah, it's going to come down to the running game. Barkley is going to be a big key for the Eagles winning. And A.J. Brown, I mean, it's A.J. Brown, man. Top 5 talent in the league. He's going to have some big plays. So I definitely love the Eagles money line.
You said it yourself. You're not going to lose too many games if you can run the ball. You know what I mean? You control the script.
Yeah, this has been a great episode, man. We need to have Matthew Montgomery come back on during the offseason.
Heck yeah, we do, man. Come on.
So, we'll set up a schedule for the offseason. I tell people all the time, y'all keep listening. We'll keep recording these. I have 2 more closing thoughts, and I'll kick it back to you guys. One of our sponsors is Brainy Ballers. If you guys are interested in a little mini helmet, like we have the IDP Hunter one right here, you can get one of these custom-made helmets. All you got to do is, go to the site, message them. They're doing a promo code right now. It's called IDP Hunter 15. You'll get an additional $15 off your helmet. Just go to brainyballers.com /shop. But yeah, really cool site. Check it out. They also have their own rankings out there. And really good. They're going to come on the show as well, Jamie, at some point. And then the last thing I wanted to say, shout out to Matthew Montgomery. This is his Twitter handle. Check him out. He does the Notebook, which is an awesome thing. He has his YouTube that I have pulled up on the screen here as well. Check out his very talented analyst. Check out his articles, the Dynasty Stock Exchange, which we already did. But yeah, check him out on Twitter. He's like me. We're always on there. We're always on there talking, helping people out. You know what I mean? So again, Matthew, pleasure to have you on. Any closing thoughts? Tell the audience where else they can find you.
Yeah, I got a goal, man. I'm trying to hit 1,500 followers by the end of this season. I started the year off with 1,100, so really trying to get that number up. I'm so close. I'm finally at double digits. So any sort of follow helps. I appreciate everybody ahead of time. And remember, you don't play fantasy football to look at your lineup and look at how pretty your roster is. You play to win, and sometimes ugly players win games. So I always tell people if they ask for fantasy football advice, I don't care how pretty or how ugly your roster is. Does it score points? Do the players have opportunities? And on the opportunities, are they scoring points? Pretty rosters are cool. Trophies are better. So you're playing to win, man. It's like, what is it? Was it Dennis Green who said that you play to win the game? Who was? I don't know.
Win the game. Yeah. That's Herm Edwards, right? Dennis Green was, you let him off the hook.
Yeah, you let him off the hook. That's who it is. But yeah, Herm, man, you play to win the game, all right? Who cares how pretty your taxi squad is? Get those guys in your lineup and play.
So I just gave Matthew Montgomery a follow on Twitter.
There's a new let's go, man.
So you're only 76 followers away from your 1,500 mark, man. Let's do it. Let's get this Matthew Montgomery 1,500 followers.
Yeah, help me out, man. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so blessed to be here.
Jamie, any closing thoughts?
Yeah, no, another great show, another great guest, and we're looking forward to having him back.
All right, everybody. This is the IDP Hunter podcast. We'll see you next week. You keep listening. We'll keep doing these and talk hard.